Imagine you're standing in a convenience store. It's a Tuesday night. You didn't plan to stop here. You just popped in real quick to grab something small. And 45 minutes later, you're walking out with a bottle of wine, a candle that smells like a forest, a protein bar you definitely don't need, and somehow, a decorative throw pillow. You don't even know how it happened. You just kind of blacked out. And it's not like you're careless with money. You actually care a lot. You've got a budget spreadsheet, you've listened to podcasts, you've told yourself this month will be different more times than you can count. And yet every single month, the money is just gone. Not stolen, not wasted on anything dramatic, just gone. And here's what kills me about that. It's not a math problem. The math is simple. It's a psychology problem. And nobody is teaching you the psychology.
My name is Nico, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. And today, that's actually really good news for you, because we are going deeper than budgets and savings rates. We're going all the way to Japan. And I promise, by the end of this video, you are going to see money in a way you have genuinely never seen it before. If you're new here, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because it really does help this channel more than you know. And I want to ask you something before we get into this. When was the last time you felt genuinely in control of your money? Not just surviving until the next paycheck, but actually in control. Drop it in the comments. I read them all. Now, we've talked about Japanese money philosophy before on this channel, and that video absolutely blew up because it clearly hit something real for people. So today, we're going even deeper. 10 more habits, the lesser known ones. The ones that don't have a cute name you've already seen on Instagram. These are the habits that live in the everyday texture of how millions of Japanese people actually relate to money. And the contrast to how most of us in the West were raised to think about it is honestly kind of staggering.
Here's the analogy I want you to hold in your head for this entire video. Most of us treat money like a fire hose. Money comes in, and our job is to just hold on tight while it sprays everywhere. We're reactive. We're constantly trying not to drop it. But Japanese money philosophy, at its core, treats money more like water in a clay pot. Water that you're actively and intentionally guiding. A little goes here, a little goes there. You know exactly where every drop is going. And the pot doesn't leak. Not because you're obsessing over every penny, but because you've built a container that naturally holds things in place. That's the shift we're talking about today. From the fire hose to the clay pot.
So, let's get into it. Habit number 1. Okyaku-sama wa kami-sama. The customer is not always king of their own wallet. Now, in Japan, there's a famous saying that the customer is God. Businesses treat customers with extraordinary care and respect. But here's the flip side that most people miss. That same cultural awareness makes Japanese consumers incredibly conscious of being sold to. They know when they're being marketed at. They feel the manipulation in a sales pitch. And so they've developed this almost automatic emotional pause whenever they're in a purchasing environment. They ask themselves, am I buying this because I actually want it? Or because someone very smart engineered this environment to make me feel like I want it? And when you start asking that question, really asking it, you realize how rarely the answer is the first one. Recent consumer behavior research shows that something close to 40% of all purchases made in physical retail stores are completely unplanned. 40%. That convenience store story at the beginning of this video, that's not a personal failure. That's a system working exactly as designed. The Japanese habit here is simple but powerful. They treat the retail environment itself with mild suspicion. Not paranoia, just awareness. They walk in knowing the deck is stacked, and that awareness alone changes behavior dramatically. Habit number 2. Kanso. The art of subtracting until something feels right. This is a Japanese aesthetic principle rooted in Zen philosophy, and it's about simplicity, not as a starting point, but as a destination you work toward. In design, kanso means removing everything that doesn't need to be there. In personal finance,
It means applying that same energy to your life. What subscriptions don't need to be there? What memberships? What recurring costs that you signed up for during a different chapter of your life that have just been quietly draining you ever since? Here's the crazy part. The average American household is paying for somewhere between 3 and 5 streaming services at any given time, but regularly watches maybe 1 or 2. That's anywhere from $50 to $150 a month going to services that are basically just sitting there. And it's not just streaming. Most people, when they actually sit down and audit their recurring expenses, which is a genuinely terrifying exercise, and I highly recommend you do it this week, find somewhere between $200 and $400 a month in subscriptions and recurring charges they had essentially forgotten about. Conso says, strip it back, and then strip it back some more. Not until it's painful, until it feels clean, until every dollar going out has a reason to be going out.
Habit number 3, ma. And this one is my personal favorite. Ma is the Japanese concept of negative space. It's the intentional pause, the meaningful gap. In music, it's the silence between the notes. In architecture, it's the empty room that makes the occupied room feel expansive. And in money, ma is the deliberate space you create between wanting something and buying it. Most of us have zero ma in our financial lives. Something catches our attention, an ad, a recommendation, something we see someone else with, and within minutes, sometimes seconds, it's in our cart. One-click purchase, done. No space, no pause, no time for the wanting to settle or dissolve. And here's where it gets really interesting. Consumer psychology research has shown consistently that when you introduce even a 48 to 72 hour delay between the moment of desire and the moment of purchase, somewhere between 30 and 50% of those purchases just don't happen. The wanting fades. You realize it wasn't actually what you wanted. It was just a moment. Ma is not willpower. It's not white-knuckling your way through not buying something. It's creating the structural space for your rational brain to catch up with your emotional brain. It's one of the most elegant and psychologically sophisticated money habits I've ever encountered.
Habit number 4, motanai. And this word genuinely doesn't have a direct English translation, which I think tells you something profound about the cultural gap. Motanai is a feeling, specifically the feeling of regret over waste. When something is thrown away before it's fully used, when potential goes unrealized, when resources are squandered. It's the pit in your stomach when you throw out a full container of leftovers or donate clothes that still have their tags on. Americans in particular have been culturally trained out of this feeling. We celebrate newness. We're told that wanting the new thing is normal and good, and that getting rid of the old thing is freeing. But Motanai says, wait. Before you replace it, have you fully used it? Before you throw it away, have you tried to fix it? Before you buy the upgrade, have you genuinely maximized what you already have? If every American household applied even a mild version of Motanai to their consumer behavior, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars staying in people's pockets instead of going back into the economy. On an individual level, research from household spending studies suggests the average family throws away or discards somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000 worth of usable goods every single year. Just gone. Not because they had to, because newness feels better than use.
Habit number 5, chisoku. Knowing when enough is enough. This might be the most countercultural money habit on this entire list, because everything about modern capitalism is designed to make sure you never feel like you have enough. Chisoku is an ancient Japanese and Buddhist concept that translates roughly to know that you have enough. And it's not about settling or giving up ambition. It's about having a clear, internally defined finish line. Let me paint you a picture. Most people operate their whole financial lives in a state of undefined aspiration. They make 50,000, they want 70. They make 70, they want 100. They make 100, they want 150. And the finish line keeps moving. Not because they're greedy, because they were never taught to define it. Chisoku asks you to do something radical. Decide what enough looks like. What level of lifestyle actually makes you feel good? What does your ideal Thursday look like? The actual Thursday, not the Instagram version. And once you know that, you can build a financial plan that targets that specific life instead of chasing a moving target indefinitely. People who practice Chisoku end up saving dramatically more than people at the same income level who don't, simply because they stop inflating their lifestyle every time their income goes up. The lifestyle stays roughly stable. The gap between income and spending widens. And that gap is where wealth is built.
Habit number 6, name-a-washi applied to money decisions. Name-a-washi is a Japanese business practice that means literally going around the roots, like carefully preparing the soil before you transplant a tree. In business, it means building consensus slowly, quietly, before making a big decision. In personal finance, I want you to apply this to major purchases. Before any significant financial decision, a car, a move, a major home renovation, starting a business, Japanese money culture encourages what is essentially a long, slow walk around the roots of that decision. You talk to people who've done it. You research for longer than feels comfortable. You sit with the discomfort of not deciding yet. You let the decision breathe. In America, we tend to do the opposite. We get excited. We get sold on the vision. We move fast because moving fast feels like confidence. And the financial graveyard of bad, fast decisions is enormous. The average American car purchase, for example, involves about 11 hours of total research. And a huge portion of that is just browsing listings, not actually doing financial due diligence. We spend more time picking a Netflix show than we do stress testing a 5-year loan. Name-a-washi says slow down on purpose. The decision will still be there tomorrow, and in 30 days. And the right answer, unlike the feeling of urgency, doesn't expire.
Habit number 7, hara hachibu. And yes, I know this one is primarily about eating, but stay with me, because the financial application of this is genuinely mind-blowing. Hara hachibu is the Okinawan practice of eating until you are 80% full. Stop before the point of satiation. Leave a little on the table, intentionally. And the reason this is relevant to money is that the psychology behind it is identical to the psychology of financial restraint. Most of us, financially and literally, eat until we're stuffed. We spend until the account is empty. We consume until we can't consume anymore. And then we feel terrible. Hara hachibu applied to money means stop spending at 80% of your capacity. If you can afford to spend $3,000 a month and still make rent and pay your bills, don't spend $3,000. Spend $2,400. Leave 20% on the table on purpose. Not because you're depriving yourself, because you're practicing the discipline of intentional restraint. And here's the math that will genuinely blow your mind. That's $600 a month invested consistently over 30 years at an average market return of around 8% turns into just over $900,000. You didn't earn more money. You didn't get a promotion. You didn't start a business. You just stopped eating until you were full.
Habit number 8, shokunin mindset applied to your career and income. A shokunin is a Japanese artisan or craftsperson, someone who dedicates their entire life to mastering a single craft. And the shokunin mindset is not about perfection for perfection's sake. It's about an almost spiritual devotion to the quality of your work as an end in itself, not purely as a means to money. Now, here's where this gets financially interesting. When you approach your work with shokunin energy, when you become the absolute best you can be at what you do, 2 things happen almost automatically.
First, you naturally become more valuable and therefore higher earning over time without having to constantly hustle and grind for raises. Your reputation does the work. And second, you stop job hopping based purely on marginal salary increases, which actually costs most people more in lost momentum, lost benefits, and lost compounding seniority than they ever make up in the new salary. The average person who stays in a role for 3 or more years and becomes genuinely excellent at it consistently out-earns the average job hopper over a 10-year period, even if the job hopper had higher peak salaries at moments along the way. Shokunin says go deep before you go wide. Mastery is the most reliable path to financial security.
Habit number 9, kodawari, the relentless pursuit of getting the details right, even the ones nobody else notices. Kodawari is what makes a Japanese chef spend 15 years learning to slice fish properly before they're considered a master. It's an obsessive commitment to the craft of a thing, down to the smallest detail. And in money, kodawari looks like this. You don't just set up a budget, you refine it. You don't just open a retirement account, you optimize the allocation inside it regularly. You don't just have an emergency fund, you know exactly how many months it covers, what interest rate it's earning, and whether that's the best place for it right now. Most people do the big, obvious things and then kind of coast. They open the account, set up the automatic transfer, and declare victory. Kodawari says the details matter. The interest rate on your savings account, the expense ratios in your index funds, the fee structure of your insurance. Each one of these individually might look small, but let me show you how this adds up. The difference between an index fund with an expense ratio of 0.05% and one with an expense ratio of 1%, which is what many actively managed funds charge, on a $100,000 investment over 30 years is somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000. That's not a small detail. That's $250,000 hiding in a number that most people never even look at. Kodawari says, look at it. Look at all of it. Habit number 10, and I saved the most powerful one for last, ikigai and the financial cost of living the wrong life. Ikigai is a Japanese concept that means your reason for being, the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And most people have heard of ikigai in terms of career fulfillment or life purpose. But here's the financial dimension that almost nobody talks about. Living in misalignment with your ikigai is one of the most expensive things you can do. Because when you're in a job that doesn't feel meaningful, when you're spending 40 or 50 hours a week doing something that drains you rather than fuels you, you compensate. You spend money to feel better. You buy things to reward yourself for suffering through another week. You go out Thursday through Sunday because you need something to look forward to. You upgrade your apartment because at least home feels good, even if work doesn't. This is sometimes called compensatory consumption, spending money to patch emotional holes created by a life that doesn't fit. And it's astronomical. Studies on workplace dissatisfaction have estimated that disengaged workers spend meaningfully more on discretionary consumption than their engaged counterparts. We're talking potentially hundreds of dollars a month on average. Ikigai says the cheapest thing you can do for your finances long term might be the hardest thing. Find work that means something to you. Because when you're not compensating for emptiness, you stop needing as much stuff to fill it.
Here's what I want you to sit with for a second. None of these 10 habits require you to earn more money. Not one of them requires a side hustle, a promotion, a crypto moonshot, or winning anything. They require something harder and more valuable than any of that. They require you to change your relationship with money at a psychological level. They require you to start treating money not as something that happens to you, but as something you actively, consciously shape. And here's the compounding truth that I come back to over and over again on this channel. These habits don't just compound financially, they compound psychologically.
When you practice ma, the intentional pause, you get better at it. The 48-hour wait gets easier. When you practice motenai, you start naturally reaching for the thing you already have before you consider buying something new. When you practice chisoku, you stop feeling the ache of the moving finish line. The habits wire themselves into your identity. And that's when something really profound happens. You stop being someone who is trying to be good with money, and you become someone who is good with money. There's a difference, a huge one. The first version requires constant effort and willpower. The second version is just who you are.
That shift from trying to being is the whole game. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the accumulation of small, quiet, unglamorous decisions. The purchase you paused on, the subscription you canceled, the decision you slowed down, the work you went deeper on, the definition of enough you actually wrote down. None of these make headlines. None of them go viral. But 30 years from now, the person who made those decisions consistently will be looking at a completely different financial reality than the person who didn't. Not because of luck, not because of income, but because of philosophy. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one, just one of these 10 habits and apply it this week. Not all 10, that's a great way to do none of them. Pick the one that hit you hardest, the one you kept thinking about as I was talking, the one where you thought, okay, that one is definitely about me. Drop it in the comments. Tell me which one and why, because I genuinely want to know. And if this video added something real to how you think about money, please share it with someone who needs it. Not someone who's already dialed in, someone who's still standing at the fire hose wondering why they're soaking wet. This might be the thing that helps them. I'll see you in the next one.